So as we go through this, what I really want you to do is to be really mindful of those children in a mainstream class that may have that anxiety, that may be impacted by other things that are going on in their lives, that can't take those multi-layered directions, that can't do two or three things at once. They're the kids that we're going to be talking about today as we do this particular course. So the first thing we're looking at is the working memory, of course, and the central executive is an attentional control system. And this central executive, think of the word central, it controls our attention and our action, it regulates flow of information and operates the retrieval of that information. So think of the central executive as the top hat. The central executive is the controller of all of these other factors, and we have these two factors called sub-slave systems. And the first one that we're looking at is the phonological loop. So the phonological loop is the system for holding and manipulating sound and speech. So what's really important about this phonological loop is that all learning, when we look at learning, learning should be done out loud. Okay? Everything goes through this thing called an articulatory loop. We need to be able to say things out loud. If you think of kids when they're learning to read, we ask a lot of kids to be really quiet when they're reading, which is really detrimental to kids. Kids need to be able to hear their mistakes. Kids need to be able to say things out loud. A quiet classroom is not necessarily a great idea. We really need to be able to have children and have adolescents hear what they're learning. We all know ourselves when we're, reading a book or something that's quite difficult, or a journal article or something that from our university days, where if it starts to become a little bit tricky, we have this mouth action and we all start to move our lips, nothing comes out. But then all of a sudden things start to become difficult. And what do? We start mumbling, we start and then all of a sudden you find yourself reading out loud. But what we do in a classroom is we say to kids, please be quiet. We really would like you to be quiet. So we really need to be mindful of what we're actually doing for kiddies and adolescents in a classroom. So everything goes, this phonological loop, everything goes through this articulatory loop, reading, talking out loud, allowing the brain to hear. Think of it like that, allowing the brain to hear what you're learning. And then what we want after that is all this information to go into this phonological store. The second sub-slave system that we're looking at is the visuospatial sketchpad. And this is the system for holding and manipulating non-verbal information. So think of this as the part that's responsible more for mathematics, whereas your phonological loop is responsible for reading, comprehension. The visuospatial is more for that non-verbal information. And it's really important that both of these systems are actually working. And for a lot of kids with working memory deficits, they'll either have a deficit in the phonological loop, or they may have a deficit in the visual spatial sketchpad, or if they're lucky enough or unlucky enough, they will have a deficit in both. And this obviously is really going to impact their learning.